Oh, I'm Penny Penny. I'm Penny P. I'm an alcoholic. So glad that we get that reminder that the recording is in progress so I could stop myself there. Thank you for that. I am so grateful to be here. I want to thank Alice for inviting me to be here and my friend Sandy for the introduction. Sandy and I have known each other for a long, long time, and it's just been so great to trudge the path with her. I walked into my first meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous in Honolulu, Hawaii on Sunday, October 9th, 1977. And since that time, I've not used or abused alcohol or any other substance that allows me to take a trip without leaving my chair. And last October, I celebrated 47 years of continuous sobriety in the program of Alcoholics Anonymous. And, you know, I just had lunch a few weeks ago with one of my grand sponsees, and she had a chip for me that she'd had since October, and we kept missing each other, or she'd forget it or whatever. And she gave me this chip, and I looked at that and I looked at that number, and I had to do the math again. It just, how can it be 47 years when I'm only 35 years old? I mean, that's the way it looks to me. So I'm grateful to be here. And I just want to start out by saying how grateful I am for those of you who are able to keep your videos on. It does make it nicer for those of us when we're speaking. Um, and I kind of play around with with my screen so that I have, especially in a meeting this size, I have an active screen of videos that are turned on, and that makes it even more fun. So I my home group is the online global speakers group. We're out of Beijing, China. We are an English speaking meeting. That has been my online home group since 2017. I did get involved, as Sandy said, I have been involved in the online community since the mid 1980s. I've done a couple of history talks about online AA, and I am an AA history nerd. So I go to different history meetings online, and I'm really, really grateful for the plethora of meetings, of online meetings. That I'm not grateful for the pandemic, but I'm so grateful for the plethora of online meetings that have come about as a result, and the history meetings that are available. And meetings like this that find a focus and to carry the message of recovery. I just love that. Um, I have a sponsor. My former sponsor celebrated 60 years last February 4th and passed away on February 14th. But we were aware that Peg's health was fragile, and that it was inevitable. And so I'd been talking with long-timer women, and the day that I got the call that Peg had passed, I reached out to a couple of women, and they reached back, and I asked one of them if she would sponsor me. And so, for those of you who are a long time sober and have had to make that decision, or are in a place of looking at making that decision, it's a whole different experience with sponsorship at this point. Getting someone that has I know a similar perspective on AA, and and so it's been really interesting. We talk once a week, and we laugh a lot. So I'm going to read. I know that Randy's going to read it at the end of the meeting, but when Alice asked me to pick something out of step 11, I have to tell you, that's one of the hardest things I have to do. During the pandemic, I started going to a 20-minute meditation meeting out of Australia. They are a day ahead of us, and it's Monday through Friday for them, and it's 7:30 in the morning for them. But they're a day ahead of us, so it's Sunday through Thursday for us, and they go on to daylight savings time just as we come off of it. So the meeting time shifts around. Right now it's at 12:30 in the afternoon for me here in the Pacific time zone. And the meeting's only 20 minutes long, and they start with two readings, one from step 11 in the big book and one from another piece of AA literature. And then we have a 2-minute timed meditation. And then we have 2-minute timed shares. And at 10 minutes to the hour, meeting's over, we're out, we're done. And it is such an amazing break in my day. And I really love this meeting. I've done service at that meeting, and I've gotten to know some of the people from that meeting. I now sponsor a woman from that meeting. I got to meet another person from that meeting when they were in Las Vegas earlier last year. And I flew to Las Vegas just to meet her. And it's just, but what happens is we keep going through step 11 in the big book. And we get to the end and we go back to the bottom of page 85. And so there's all of these things that I've heard people saying for the last 4 years in this meeting that I think, oh, I want to share that in a meeting. Oh, I want to share that in a meeting. And so when Alice said, pick one thing, it was like, I want to talk about all of it. But you guys do this week after week, so people have talked about all of it. And so I did pick from the 12 and 12, from page 99 in our 12 and 12 in step 11 from the prayer of St. Francis. And here's the reason I did that. I was at a meeting, I don't know how long ago, sometime in the past, since we've been online, because it was an online meeting. But it's just in the past few years. And a friend of mine was sharing, and she was talking very honestly about something that she had been walking through, that she had been struggling with, and another person that she'd been struggling with. And she was talking with a friend of hers in the program about it. And they said, well, it sounds like you've got a resentment. And she's, I don't have a resentment. I don't have a resentment. Why would you say I don't have a resentment? Well, I don't know about you, but when I start talking that way, I've got a resentment. And so she sat down and she read from the 12 and 12, and she read step 11. When I get up in the morning, usually I would love to say this, that I am consistent and do it every day, but I usually take some prayer time and I take some quiet time. And when I close my prayer time, with God, lead me where you need me. And and then I go about my day. And if I'm really lucky, I get to make it to that 20-minute meeting out of Australia, which reminds me, God, lead me where you need me. So anyway, my friend Lori was talking about this, and she said she was reading from step 11 in the 12 and 12. And she got to the prayer of St. Francis. And she had just been in a meeting where somebody had talked about changing the language into first person. And so if anybody is offended by me changing what's actually in the text, I apologize. But it was really impactful for me, because it made me look at the prayer of St. Francis from a different perspective. And it put me more in line with God, lead me where you need me. It put me more in line with my role. My job is to carry the message. My job isn't to make sure the message is delivered. My job is to carry the message of recovery and of a spiritual awakening. So this is how she read it. And I have the new 12 and 12 that has the changes in it and the traditions at the end of the essays. So it's not all marked up yet. So I haven't marked this copy up yet. So I may stumble over this a bit as I'm reading it because I haven't made the changes in this copy. But here's what I don't know if this is what she read. This is what I heard. Do any of you have that problem? I don't know what they said. I only know what I heard. So, Lord, make me a channel of your peace, that where there is hatred, may they feel love. That where there is wrong, may they know the spirit of forgiveness. That where there is discord, may they hear harmony. That where there is error, may they know the truth. That where there is doubt, may they have faith. That where there is despair, may they feel hope. That where there are shadows, may they be in the sunlight of the Spirit. That where there is sadness, may they know joy. And when she read that, what it did for me was it takes me out of my self-centeredness, out of my selfishness, out of my focus that it's all about me. Because I understand what St. Francis was writing when he wrote this, but for me, I need to hear myself looking at it from that different perspective of I can't know that I can bring them love, but I pray that they have love. I can't bring the spirit of forgiveness, but I hope that they feel it for them and for others. That I can tell the truth. I can be reminded that my job is to tell the truth without being cruel. And that I hope that that's what they hear. That I can't bring them faith, but I can share my faith. And I can hope that whatever their belief is, that they have a faith. And that they are brought into the sunlight of the Spirit, and that they do feel joy. Because that has been my experience in the program of Alcoholics Anonymous, is that I came in here, nobody had to explain to me when I walked in the doors of Alcoholics Anonymous. I started drinking in a cocktail lounge in New York, and I was a blackout drinker. And so I have no clue what happened for most of my drinking because I was a blackout drinker and it's all hearsay. But I walked into AA from a Skid Row bar, from coming to behind a Dempsey dumpster of a bar on Hotel Street in Honolulu, supporting my habit the way women who drink in those places find it necessary to do that. That's my story. So nobody had to explain pitiful and incomprehensible demoralization. Nobody had to explain restless, irritable, and discontent. Children of chaos, which Bill calls us. In our big book, he doesn't use the word denial in the first 164 pages. He uses the word defiant and delusional. And that was me. And so I need to, for me, remember my relationship with my higher power. Remember what my job is here, and that my job is to be the best big book I can be, to be as honest about my experience, strength, and hope as I can, to share as honestly as I'm able to, and to remember that it's not all about me, and I didn't do it. That I did the work, but I had to leave the results up to my higher power. When I came into AA, when I made that call to Alcoholics Anonymous that Sunday afternoon, and I told the woman on the phone that I wanted to know something about your program for a friend of mine that I thought might have a problem. And she suggested I take my friend to a meeting. And I said, no, my friend wouldn't want to do that. But if you tell me about Alcoholics Anonymous, I'll tell my friend about Alcoholics Anonymous. And so she started talking about the big book and the steps. And she mentioned the word God. And I interrupted and explained that I don't believe in God. And she asked if my friend believed in God. So I let her tell me where there was a meeting. And I didn't think I believed in God when I got here. And then my friend Jim talked to me about the Great Universal Spirit on page 52. And he says he just shortens that to Gus. And a friend of mine on the East Coast, who's a minister, said that she uses the word Gus, but it's not, but it's for the gal upstairs. And what I realize is that I was in a meeting sometime last year, and there was a guy that shared that he calls his higher power Andy because he grew up in the religion that he grew up in sang a lot of hymns during services, and they used to sing a song a hymn where they said, Andy walks with me, Andy talks with me, and he tells me I am his own. So he calls his higher power Andy. And I realized that my higher power is gender fluid. Sometimes it's a he, sometimes it's a she, sometimes it's a they. My higher power, if I was talking to the same higher power that I had when I got here, you'd have a different speaker, because my perspective and my relationship with my higher power has changed. And it has changed as a result of the steps of Alcoholics Anonymous. As I have changed, my perspective has changed. And when I was new, the one thing that has remained the same, interestingly enough, when I was new and I didn't know how to pray, a friend of mine, not in AA, but a friend of mine suggested that I ask God to help me. And the only thing I knew to do at night when I said my prayers was to say, now I lay me down to sleep. And so I said that prayer. My mama changed it a little bit. It's not the prayer that many people use. There's a little different thing in it. But when I still, 47 years later, my evening prayer is now I lay me down to sleep. My morning prayer starts with, good morning, God. How you doing today? Here I am. I'm ready to face the day and to see what you have in store for me. And then I just talk to God. And I do that as a result of people that I've known during my my travel on this path, people that have trudged the path with me, that have shared their own experience, things that I've picked up from other AA members. The thing, being able to practice Rule 62 and bring some humor into it with, every once in a while calling my higher power Andy and Gus and whatever else. So as I do those things, and as I practice this step, put this step into practice in my life, I'm overwhelmed and often caught off guard by the things that I find. I said that I go to that meeting down in Australia, and I had to get a brand new big book during the beginning of the pandemic. The big book I was using before we went into shutdown was falling apart. And I'd sit on my computer and I'd open my book in a meeting and the pages would fall out. And I'd be scrambling out of the view of my screen to pick up pages. So I had to grab a new big book off the shelf. And I have lots of AA books behind me. So I had one handy. So it's funny to me to open this book and to realize I've only been working with this particular copy for 4 or 5 years now. And how marked up it is because of the meetings that I've gone to, the things that I have heard people say, because those are the meetings I seek out, is the meetings where people we're either reading the book or we're talking about the step, or I'm sitting in a meeting like this, or I'm at a traditions meeting or whatever, and I have all of these amazing things. I had a sponsor early in my sobriety that took me through the book to do the steps, and she had me look for prayers, promises, and principles as we went through the book. And she said there's prayers in if it says we ask, that's prayer. And we've got, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 prayers in the 11th step in the big book. And it's just, as I go through my day, I try to put this into practice. I sponsor several women, and once a year we do what we call an advance, because we go forward, we don't retreat. And we do an advance every September over on the coast. And last year we did our advance on the 11th step. And on Friday night, we started with when we retire at night. And on Saturday morning, our first meeting was on awakening. How amazing is that? And our Saturday evening meeting was as we go through the day. And then we read that paragraph again. At the end of the meeting, we read that paragraph on Saturday night of when we retire at night. And there's so much in there. And I listened to other people talk about the 11th step. And my book, you can't see it online, I know, but it's all marked up and it's highlighted. And I've got all of these things circled. And I've got, we ask. My friend Lynn, I was talking with her a few months ago, and she was talking about on the bottom of page 86, she said that she had a sponsee call her and she was all agitated. And Lynn said, well, why don't you just relax? She said, drop your shoulders. Just drop your shoulders. She said, take it easy. Take a deep breath. Relax. Drop your shoulders. Take a deep breath. And ask God for inspiration. And I said, oh, Lynn, that's amazing. How did you think of that? And she said, oh, it's on the bottom, page 86. And it's like, oh my God, it is. Here we ask God for inspiration, intuitive thought, or a decision. We relax and take it easy. We don't struggle. So, when I go into that 11th step meeting in Australia at 12:30, Sunday through Thursday, actually Monday through Thursday, because I have a commitment on Sundays. As I go into the meeting and we have quiet time before the meeting starts, because I get there a little early, I sit back and I close my eyes and I drop my shoulders and I take a deep breath and I ask God for inspiration and I move through my day. And when I leave that meeting, I ask God once again to lead me where he needs me, where she needs me, where I'm needed. And I'm just, when I start talking about it, just focused on that little bit, I am amazed that from the woman that walked in the door, that I get to have the amazing life that I have today, that I get to have the people in my life that I have today. Some of you that I know on this meeting are aware that a year ago I took a fall and I broke my shoulder and had to have emergency surgery. And boy, my sponsees helped and people in the program helped and my neighbors helped. And I was talking to a friend of mine that's one of my knitting friends, and she's not in AA. And I said to her, Susan, I have a village. And Susan laughed and she said, Penny, you don't have a village. You have a metropolis. And my life was so small. Think about what our lives were like when we got sober. My life was my apartment, my classroom, and my bar. That was it. My apartment, my classroom, and my bar, whichever bar I was drinking at that night. And today I get to travel around the world sitting in front of a computer, and I get to travel around the world physically. I've had the joy of being in meetings in Warsaw and the Hatov, Poland, and in Krakow. I've been to meetings in Kishinev, Moldova. I went to Moldova with 3 friends in the program, and we were privileged to take the very first AA meeting into one of their one of their prisons, and it was the women's prison that's just outside of Kishinev. They've never had AA in their prison before. That was just before COVID. It did shut down during COVID, but it opened up again. And the women in AA in Kishinev, Moldova, take a women's meeting into that penitentiary, that women's penitentiary, once a week. And that had never happened before. Those women had never heard the music and the poetry of Alcoholics Anonymous. I've gotten more involved in general service. I've gotten more involved in my community. I've gotten more involved in the online community. And I'm just so grateful to be here. And I don't think Allie has flashed the 5 minutes yet, but I really think I'm done. And I'm going to turn it back over to, I guess, Michelle, and just thank you so much for allowing me to be of service and to carry the message of Alcoholics Anonymous. Thank you.
Hey, family. My name is Allison. I'm a grateful member of Alcoholics Anonymous. And Penny, what a joy it was to hear you tonight, but more importantly, what a joy it is to be in your metropolis. So this is a meeting where we do ask people to ask questions. I don't see any hands up, so I'm going to get us moving. But there was so much, and as our friend Teresa often says, let's get more out of her. Let's squeeze more out of Penny. Mike, thank you so much for putting your hand up. Come on in, my friend.
Yeah, hey everybody, Mike, alcoholic. Penny, I really appreciate you. I've listened to you, I've heard you. I've also listened to some folks that you sponsor. And yeah, it's been an honor. And 47 years, my question to you is, how do you remain teachable with that amount of time? And how do you keep yourself from pulling the penalty flag out of your pocket and throwing it down on the field in a meeting when you hear something that's just being parroted from somewhere else and it's not true because you're an historian and you know it's what's right and what's wrong? It's kind of, I'm sorry, that doesn't have anything to do with step 11, but golly, I just want to know that.
Okay, let me take that last one first because I don't remember what the first question was, remaining teachable. Let me talk about that. So I was taught that the humility that we're supposed to learn through the steps means that I have to remain teachable. But I was also taught about Rule 62, which comes out of our traditions. Don't take yourself so damn seriously. About the time that I start to take myself so damn seriously, I surround myself with people who I can hear. I have a sponsor that I can hear. I have friends that I can hear when they say something to me. I had a dear friend who you may have known, my friend Dave C., who passed away last November. And I can tell you that Dave and I would try and have a meal together every few weeks. And I can't tell you the number of times that I'd be talking to Dave about something and he'd say, Penny, that's a none ya. It's none ya business. And I need people like that. I need to have people, but I also have people in my life that, I had a boss that said to me one time, we were having dinner, we were on a business trip and we were having dinner, and we were talking about something that had happened at the office that day. And he said, I just hate it when I see my character defects reflected in other people. And what I have learned is that when I start to get irritated, oh my God, that's what I sound like when I do that. That's what I look like when I do that. Not only that, but this is how people feel about it when I do that. So that's one of the challenging things. And then what was the other question you asked? Something about
is the penalty flag.
Oh, the penalty flag. I am really bad at that. If I have an emotion, it goes right across my face. And my friend Debbie D, several of you know my friend Debbie D. Debbie and I have traveled together. We've gone to conferences together. We've known each other for years and years. Debbie she's able to have this neutral face. My sponsor, Peg M, was able to do that, this neutral face. I work at having that neutral face. But there are times when I have to put my hand in front of my mouth so you can't see me gritting my teeth, and I have to close my eyes so you can't see because they're going to roll right out of my head. And I'm better. I'm a lot better than I used to be. But I also have to remember the things that I said as a newcomer, the patience. There is a special place in heaven for the women that sponsored me, that walked me through the steps, that the long timers that sat in those first early meetings, the people that sit in meetings with me today. I have lunch once a month with 5 long timer guys. And, I just have to sit back and keep my mouth shut and listen. And one of them's 56 years sober, and I adore him. And I need to remember that I need to listen to them more than they need to hear what I have to say. So I don't know if that helps.
Thank you, Penny. That was beautiful. Marissa, thank you so much for putting your hand up again this week. I'm really excited to hear what your question is.
Hi, everyone. Marissa May, alcoholic. Thank you so much, Penny, for your share tonight. You mentioned that your relationship with God has changed over your years of sobriety, and I was wondering if you might share some of those pivotal moments where your relationship had to change or shift, and what that was like for you.
Well, the first one that comes to mind is probably one of the biggest ones was when I was in my teens in sobriety. I was resting on my laurels. I was a bitch. I had to be in control. I had to, I was the bleeding deacon. It talks about in our 12 and 12. I was hoping to someday become an elder statesman. I think now I'm kind of a bleeding statesman. But I was a bleeding deacon, but I was also just on the edge of Alcoholics Anonymous. I was letting everybody else be of service. I was going to the potlucks. I was going to the events. But I was not in the middle of the solution. I had a service commitment, but it was like, it was like a foo-foo kind of, it got me attention as opposed to really doing the work. It was not an inconvenient, there was nothing inconvenient about the service commitments I was doing. And what happened for me was that I got a new sponsor, my sponsor, Peg M, when I was 19 years sober, my 19th AA birthday. She said that she would sponsor me. And I made the mistake of telling her that I'm low maintenance. Don't ever say that to a sponsor, and don't ever believe that if somebody says it to you. None of us are low maintenance. And a year later, I called Peg, and I'd had a rude awakening. And I called Peg and I told her what was going on. And she said, I think you need to go back through the steps. And I went back through the steps, and and I know lots of long timers who have found themselves at that jumping off point again. Not that we're going to drink, but that some of us that we're either going to do the work and stay, or that we're going to leave because it just makes us so uncomfortable. And I was willing to do the work, and I was willing to do the work because I had this new sponsor. I was willing to do the work because I realized my life depended on it. I was willing to do the work because I had no place else to go except for Alcoholics Anonymous. And I did the work, and going back through the steps. And my experience has been that I can't take someone else through the steps without doing them myself. So I'm constantly in the steps, and I'm constantly in the traditions, and I'm in our literature because I talk to the women I sponsor about the traditions, how the traditions play a part, not just the steps. I use the traditions checklist a lot. And all of that has just strengthened my connection with my higher power. And whatever is happening for he, she, they, I'm letting them take care of that. And I'm just asking them to come in and be with me as I go through my day. So.
Thank you. Lana, it's you, baby.
Hi, everyone. Lana, alcoholic. Penny, thank you so much for your share tonight. And I identify with a lot. And I just wanted to say just a few things about the identification. When I came into Alcoholics Anonymous, the only prayers that I practiced was the Lord's Prayer and the Serenity Prayer. But when I was coming up, my mother had us all saying, "Now I lay me down to sleep." And I remember last year telling my sponsor about this fear of that prayer. And I told her how it would rock me as a child and I would be afraid to go to sleep. And she picked up on, "You still afraid of that prayer?" And then she broke that prayer down to me and explained as an adult how I could comprehend and want to say that prayer again. And the other thing was our 5-year-old Eliza granddaughter. She likes to say Nunya all the time. But I wanted to ask you, what was your process of getting a new sponsor? Especially with someone with a lot of time, it's not easy. So I want to know, I'm sure that had a lot to do with your prayer and meditation, but I'm asking, what was your process? Thank you so much for tonight.
Thank you. And I'll put in the chat the "Now I lay me down to sleep" that I use, because I had a problem with that also, and my mama changed it for us so that it was acceptable. But so getting a new sponsor, it's really challenging, isn't it? A friend of mine, I have a friend in the program, my friend Jolene, who is 6 months behind me in sobriety. We've known each other since we got sober. We've known each other for 47 years. She lost her sponsor shortly after my sponsor passed away. One of the things that I did was I reached out to other women and asked them for if they knew of anybody that they thought I should maybe talk to. We knew that Peg was close to, that her health was deteriorating very quickly. COVID was not kind to her. And so I had time, but there was an urgency at it for me. I knew that she was going to be my sponsor until the day she passed, but I needed to have somebody to reach out to. So I went to meetings where, if somebody named somebody, I went to meetings where those women were going to meetings, and I listened to them share. And I asked for their contact information, and I reached out to them, and I made phone calls, and I talked to them, and I looked at how they responded to text messages and how they responded to voicemail, and if we were compatible when we talked on the phone, and did we laugh, and did we pray, and what's their AA philosophy, as it were. And in doing that, I narrowed it down to a few people. My friend Jolene, her sponsor passed away about 6 months after Peg had passed. And I had helped her get her sponsor, Linda, as a sponsor many years ago. She had asked me, do you know of anybody? And Linda was the first name that came to mind. And I said, call my friend Linda and see if she's not available, let me know, and I'll see if I can think of anybody else that you might want to talk to. And she and Linda hit it off right from the beginning. So Linda had passed, and about 6 weeks later, Jolene reached out and she said, "Well, you did it once. Let's see if you can do it again." And I sent her some names, and she called me up a few days later and said, "Oh, I asked so-and-so to be my sponsor. And it's someone that I just adore." So sometimes, people see a connection. Peg was a long distance sponsor for me. So I was already used to being a long distance sponsee. My sponsor and I do a Zoom call usually, and we laugh a lot, but we also do just phone. So we do get to see each other more than Peg and I did because a lot of people weren't comfortable with the online community prior to the pandemic. So I don't know if any of that helps, but that's what we did.
Thank you. Ken, please come in.
Team Penny, thank you for your service. I love this meeting. I'm so grateful that I got steered to this meeting. It's up my AA game when I really needed it. So thank you. Penny, one thing that's so palpable about where you are is despite 47 years, you know, you love, it seems like you hear Andy through others. And I think that's beautiful. So thank you. My question is, for how do you recommend looking for the meetings such as that you have found all over the world? How do you go about it? You know, you can't just try everything. You know, there's time and space. What did you do?
Well, I did a lot of what you did to find this meeting. You know, I asked friends, you know, so what meetings are you going to? I share, I have put in the chat the Australia meeting and would love to see any of you there. The information is in the chat, and I think this group has the save chat enabled. I ask other people what meetings they're going to. I go back to meetings where I've been invited to speak. I've been to this one before. It had slipped off of my calendar, but it may make its way back on because, you know, I enjoy the format, and I know several people that are here, and I enjoy seeing them. I enjoy this question and answer portion of the meeting. I ask if somebody, it's similar to what I do when I've relocated, that if I hear somebody share in a meeting and they're talking about recovery, they're talking about sponsorship, they're talking about the steps, they're talking about the big book, they're not, you know, when they get called on, they're not saying, oh, well, my day was really crappy, I ran out of gas, and oh my God, I didn't know, you know, it's like, okay, so what you're doing is telling me God gave you a lot of opportunities to grow today, and you just got pissed at every one of them. I want to know, how do you stay sober through those things? You know, when I listen to long-timers speak, and it's one of the things I really try to do, when I listen to long-timers speak, I don't want a 45-minute drunk-a-log and then 5 or 10 minutes on, oh, and then I got sober and everything's great, and, you know, and I just, blah, 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 blah. I want to know, how did you go through those tough times? How did I get through what I went through at 20 years? How did I survive when my mama was dying? How did I survive when my sister was found dead from our disease? How do you walk through those things? And sometimes I don't walk through them with grace and dignity and my head held high. When my father passed away, I didn't even realize what my grief was doing to me until somebody finally said something. But I have people in my life that do that. So, you know, it's one of those things that I rely on the people that I go to meetings with. I rely on, where am I hearing the solution? How am I hearing how to live life on life's terms? And because that's what I got to do. So.
Thank you for a beautiful answer. Samantha, will you put your camera on for us? Maybe you have it on and it's just really, really dark there. Come on in.
Sorry, I do have my camera on. I'm in hospital, so
okay.
My room's pretty dark. But I saw it in her hands, and I wanted to thank you so much, Penny. I love seeing you at meetings, and I love all that you have to share and offer all the time with this beautiful, bright energy that you have. And I love seeing you in the history meetings. So my question to you was, and I'm really sorry that I missed a lot because there were nurses coming in and out, so I didn't catch everything. But what is your current wow of some new history you found or that you're just loving at the moment?
I will tell you that what I really love right at this very moment is Francine W. from Southern California just did a workshop on the advisory actions of the General Service Conference. And we got to look at the history of Alcoholics Anonymous through our advisory actions, because our advisory actions are really what have shaped AA. And I mean, that is so AA geek to download the document that has all of the advisory actions and then go through. And I will tell you that what I really went through in detail was the literature committee, but I know that, I mean, there's so much other stuff that I have to go through. And when you see some of the stuff that, I mean, how many times I will just tell you that, the big print, big book was a proposed agenda item, was an agenda item 30 years ago, 40 years ago. I mean, it was like in panel 10 or 12. And they kept saying, we don't have that many people that are visually impaired in AA. We have old people in it. And so then, it finally got approved. So it's really fun to see those things. It's really, it's really interesting for me on different pamphlets that I have an interest in on the plain language big book. I mean, it came to the table it was introduced in the 1990s that we have a plain language big book. And then, we finally get it into the agenda items in 2016. And then we finally get it to the table again in 2019. And now we have the PLBB. So.
That was a great question. Thank you, Samantha. And Penny, what a great answer. And before we move on to my brother Calvin, for anyone that's new, can you please just give people a thumbnail of what an advisory is? Because many people don't know. And I want to tie it to this. Early on, you put in the chat, the brand new AAGSO podcast, Our Primary Purpose, dropped today. Find the first episode wherever you get. So can you just talk a little bit about how all these things tie together in the being a geek, a AA nerd?
Sure. So I am a huge fan of the AA Grapevine podcast. I listen to it every week, and I love it. And I go back. I have favorite episodes and favorite people, and you can find out about the AA Grapevine podcast wherever you get your podcasts. And today, January 14th, from an advisory action, they approved the General Service Conference approved an AA General Service Office podcast. It's called Our Primary Purpose. My understanding is somebody wanted to name it Pod 459 instead of Box 459, and GSO said, no, we're not going to do that. I think they just don't have a sense of humor, but I'm going to call it Pod 459. But it's called Our Primary Purpose. It dropped today. I've listened to only a part of it. You can get it wherever you get your podcasts, or you can go to aa.org and just put in podcast in the search engine. You can go to aagrapevine.org and put and click on the podcast. So that's what the podcasts are. And they're just short, 30 minutes, I think. Is it a 30-minute show, Alice? Podcast, and they're interesting to listen to. You can pull it up if you've got quite the right stuff in your vehicle. You can pull it up while you're driving to the grocery store and listen to part of it, and then listen to it while you're going to the gas station. And then, it's really easy to listen to, and you can break it up in pieces. Advisory actions. The advisory actions. So every year, groups and districts and areas submit proposed agenda items. The proposed agenda items are things like the plain language big book. They're things like big print pamphlets. They're ideas about new pamphlets. They are about a new history book or about a new, we've been suggesting for several years a 5th edition of the big book. And as you know, it was approved panel 72, I think, approved the 5th edition. They, no, 71 maybe. Anyway, they put out a call for stories. They've received stories. The committee is reading the stories. They have to whittle it down to about 12 stories for the 5th edition, and they got over 1,200 stories. So the committee has to read every single one of those stories and keep whittling it down and whittling it down. And so the advisory actions are things like that come out, that groups around the world or around the US and Canada, which is what our General Service Conference serves, that they submit. So in 1953, a new pamphlet for young alcoholics was suggested to be prepared, that the pamphlet Medicine Looks at AA be revised. There was a pamphlet in 1953 called The Alcoholic Husband. In 1957, that there was an agenda item for the pricing of Bill's new book, AA Comes of Age. In 1958, the old timer pamphlet be tabled for the present time, since after a year of exploration, there is inadequate material to warrant publication. And you get to see the things that have been recommended and what have been approved. Now, all of that is contained in a final report that you can get. I hate that I have all of this stuff at hand. A final report for each General Service Conference that you can get from your delegate after the GSC, which is held every April in New York. That's where our delegates go. So those of you who have a GSR, your GSR takes information from your group, ideas from your group. They take it to district. District talks about it and they take it to area. Area talks about it and they see if they want to submit a proposed agenda item. And then the proposed agenda item goes to New York and the board decides if they want it to be an actual agenda item. And then after board weekend, all of our board members, this is too much to go into this quickly, but our board members decide which agenda items should go to the General Service Conference. In April, all of our delegates that represent each of our 93 areas in the US and Canada meet in New York and they do the work of AA and they take a group conscience. And, this is where our traditions really come into play. They are guided by spiritual principles. They make the best decision they believe they can make based on the information they have. And that's how we get things like our new pamphlets, like the transgender pamphlet was approved at last year's General Service Conference. The Asian American alcoholic pamphlet was approved at last year's General Service Conference. The plain language big book was approved conditionally with changes. And as many of you know, not all of those changes made it into the first printing. And that's why after the 70,000 copies sold out in about a week and a half, there was a wait before the second printing was available because they needed to make those changes and get the printing, but they shipped this week. And so all of that is part of the history of AA, how we get new pamphlets, how we get changes in AA, how we move forward, how we sometimes move backwards. So that's how the change to the preamble came about. So I hope that's helpful.
That was really helpful. And Calvin, I see you put your hand down. I'm going to go to Peter.
No, I got my hand up.
Okay, come on.
Somebody else moved over. I didn't move nothing. Oh, thank you, Penny. Thank you for sharing. And I just want to say we're out of time, and so I won't share what I wanted to share. So just thank you.
Thank you.
I love you. Okay, Peter, you're up.
Hey, Penny. My name's Peter. I'm an alcoholic. I've only been sober for 85 days. Yeah, or I've been sober for 85 days.
That's
And
wonderful.
I do have one quick question for you because I've been having a lot of anxiety and everything like that coming up on the 90-day mark. And so my question to you is, how did you or did you have, um, how did you overcome early sobriety anxiety of accomplishing milestones such as your 30 days, your 60 days, your 90 days, your 120 days? Can you give me any advice?
What I had to do was I had to take one day at a time and break it down to 1 minute at a time. I had to make a lot of phone calls. You know, we didn't have voicemail and texting and all that when I got sober. I made a lot of phone calls. I went to a lot of meetings. Um, I talked to people. I took service commitments, so I had to be someplace. I cannot drink today because I have to wash coffee cups at Kapahulu Library tonight. I talked to old timers. I talked to newcomers. I got a best friend in AA. I got somebody that I could talk to before I called my sponsor so that when I told her what I was thinking, she could say, "You're going to tell your sponsor what?" Because my brain is out to kill me and it's going to make it look like an accident and it's going to blame it on you. So I needed to have people to talk to. I needed to have a best friend. I needed to have someone that I could listen to their crazy thinking as much as they listened to my crazy thinking. And when I know you're at 85 days, when I had 5 years, I called a friend of mine that I'd gotten sober with. And I said, CJ, I don't know what to do now. I had never envisioned being sober 5 years. And if I did, and I said to CJ, I said, I don't know what to do now. He said, what do you mean? I said, I've been sober 5 years. What do I do now? And he said, well, you might try doing today the same thing you did yesterday. And whatever you do, you have 85 days ago, you got the very best sobriety date you could ever have. There is not a better sobriety date out there. Do not go looking for another sobriety date. The one you have is perfect. It fits you wonderfully. Use that sobriety date. Hang on to that one and keep coming back. Don't drink and don't die.